good to see you.
Good to see you.
You're always looking happy. In spite of all the things they throw at us, you're always looking happy.
Well, I try my best, as do you.
Good. Well, listen, the viewers are going to be joining us now, so they will get their little alerts and they'll be told that we're coming on live and they'll be joining us now. So while they're joining us, let's you and I have a very quick catch up. How is life? How is the mind, body and soul with all that's going on?
Well, the mind, body and soul, I can say that the mind is great, perfect. Couldn't ask for better. The body could do with a little bit of exercise. Mind and soul, brilliant. Because I think, as you know, I have my spiritual practice, and that's what keeps me going throughout everything. And when this all hit last year, I just found myself thinking to myself, I honestly don't know how, as I was going down the rabbit holes and discovering things, I was thinking to myself, I don't know how people can cope with what's going on, because they call it truth trauma, don't they? Without some form of, kind of spiritual grounding and kind of something that just you can cling on to and hold on to, that keeps you going. So yeah, I just I think it's a daily practice to just keep yourself up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very tough. And have you noticed with your members that lately more people are finding it really, really tough as the noose around their neck, and as this thing closes in and it comes right down to your door and right down into your personal life? Have you noticed that people are struggling more the last couple of weeks than ever?
It's taken a sort of different turn, because at the beginning it was all very theoretical, and the kind of messages I was getting were people just really struggling mentally with what was going on and being able to cope with what was being inflicted upon them. Whereas now it's all got real, and it's all got even more real with the latest NHS announcement. So that was what we covered last Friday, and I think you'd spoken to Edward the day before, and I spoke to
Edward. That's right. Yeah, so I'll share that video, because that video that you did with Edward, that gets quite a lot of good views. So that was a good video you guys did.
Yes, because people just need to know where they stand, and it's a really difficult position, because even when people know their rights theoretically, I think because people don't have experience of using the law, they're still just scared. And it's one thing like that. That's why I call it assert your right, KKK, assert your rights. It's one thing to know your rights, another thing to be able to assert them, and it's asserting the rights that's really tricky. So we had a lot of people on that call, and people just want to know how they can get by, and and it's not just NHS, it's employers in all industries. But do you know what? Today I got a message from a lawyer friend of mine who had said to me, she basically said, Mina, and I put her in touch with Edward, but she said that she was getting contacted by employers who were looking to her to find out, because they were worried, because they don't want to sack their employees and they don't want to enforce vaccine mandates. So that's really heartening, because we think, as the employee, you might think it's the other way around. Your employers are imposing these mandates, but they don't actually want to, and they think they have to. This is how bad
these are the best workers. I mean, these are I think if people are critical thinkers and they're principled enough to be prepared to lose their job due to this mandate, then how good are they at their job? They're probably really, really good, conscientious, hard workers anyway. Why would any business want to lose them? So the employers are only doing it. It's not as if these employers would be sacking these people anyway. There's only one reason that they're sacking them. The government are making them sack them. That's it.
I think they're getting pressured. When they talk about the passports, it's the reason why the government didn't impose them as itself, as a government thing, is because they know that they legally can't. Right? That's my view on it. Back in March, when they had that consultation, on the certification scheme, right? There were so many submissions put in, all against, as far as I know, like so many against, like, and some really good ones from the group, you know, from the protest groups and the scientific groups. And I'd put one in, and it was really lengthy, but it went into great detail, and I've researched the law on it, going into human rights laws and going into the medical side of things, and going into the proofs, you know, whether or not these things work, all of that evidence. And then when you put that against the laws and cases that have actually gone through, and actual case law, you can see that there isn't the case for these kind of mandates or passports or certification schemes as a blanket rule. And that's why the government are trying to coerce and trick the employers to do it. And
yeah, absolutely. It's very cowardly tactics, isn't it? Very, very cowardly tactics there. Now, just for the purposes of the viewers there, because we've got viewers from both our sites. We're on your Telegram group, and we're on your Facebook group, but we're also on the Awaken Pages group and the Scottish People's Forum and a couple of other groups as well. Okay, so you and I go back to, I think it was October last year. I was on a holiday in Ibiza seeing my brother, and we had our first meeting. I can't remember how we got connected, but somebody connected some dots and threw us together. And then you and, what's the lawyer girl's name? I forgot her name. She's very good. Claire Willis. Willis, what's her surname again?
Yeah, Claire Wills Harrison. And,
Claire Wills Harrison, and she's another fiery. I mean, you and her, Dolores was on that meeting as well. We had a few heavy hitters in there actually.
Yeah, lawyers and medics we had, and you know, and other professionals. And these people have all gone on to do different things. So Claire's focused on something else. She's done a lot of work on that drug that they've been using in the care homes.
I've seen that, yep.
Which I actually spoke to the funeral director that's been speaking out. I spoke to him yesterday, and there is so much going on with that drug. It begins with an R. No, it's not that one. It's not that one. It's the begins with an M.
Yes, the one that begins with an M, yeah. Look, we might have to speak a wee bit in code tonight, guys, because occasionally, as you know, the artificial intelligence that runs these YouTubes and things, they can take you down. So we might speak in code. But yeah, it begins with an M.
Yeah, and this is all transcripted as well by YouTube, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Claire's done a lot of work on that. Obviously, she works with the elderly as a lawyer, so she knows exactly what's going on in the care homes. As we know, Dolores has gone on to set up an airline, and then we had Liz on that call as well.
Liz Evans was there as well, yeah.
Yeah, she's behind UK Medical Freedom Alliance. So
yeah, she's done some great things as well. Liz has done some absolutely amazing things.
Yeah. So there's just like, there's so many groups now, but we are all connected in a way, which is really good, because I think each group seems to be tackling things from a different angle.
Well, everybody's taking their own skill sets. I mean, your background, so you've got a law degree, is that right?
I've got a law degree. So my background, where I came into this was, in terms of the law. I actually, quite a few years back, I had planned to emigrate to Australia. So I went and did my law degrees in Australia, in the Gold Coast. Not a bad place to be to study law, but, God, it was stressful. And I completed that. And then I was halfway through, I'd started on a PLT, which is like the practical legal training that you do. And I'd done that in Sydney. And circumstances brought me back home to the UK. And then, one thing transpired to another, and I've ended up staying here. But as it happens, with my law degree, you can't just easily convert that to an English law degree and then go on to practice. And so life events happened. I've got married in the meantime, and
did you plan to practice? Was that the plan?
I would have practiced in Australia though. But when I came back to the UK and looked at practicing in the UK, I've ended up going down a different route. So my husband works in a particular industry, and I tag along with him. We have our own business. I do wills and trusts, so that's what I work in. So I don't work as a lawyer, so I have a knowledge of the law, and I would say, I'm more academic in terms of the law. So I can talk in legal terms, but I wouldn't be able to represent you in court, for instance. I'm not that kind of lawyer, right?
Yeah. And with regards to, so when we met, you're a very hard worker. I mean, I'm not kidding on when I say that. I mean, you've grafted non-stop at a couple of different projects. Your main project being the CAC UK project. Now I'm going to put that onto the screen that we can actually have a quick chat about it. And you and I are still there in the corner. You can see us there. I'll maybe put it in slightly differently. Let me see. I'll put it in like that. I'll put it in like this. Okay. So class action COVID UK, CAC UK.
Yeah.
Now you had a little sort of play on words with that, because you believed that the whole thing was a lot of CAC as well, and you chose the letters accordingly as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it's just an acronym, but I think, acronyms kind of do count in the end. And it was just a sort of play on words, really. It's Class Action COVID UK. So, in the UK, I'll just explain. So we know about class actions from America, right? We kind of see them in TV dramas and stuff. But in the UK, we have a thing called group litigation. So a class action isn't technically what you would normally call it. But this project is called Class Action COVID UK because, we are a class of people. So the class of people it represents is all of the British public. So if you live in the UK, then you would be one of these people. So we're a group of people, and we've possibly all been harmed by these measures. And initially, when we started this, it was lockdown that we were focusing on. Now, we'd extend that to COVID measures, and COVID measures includes lockdown, social distancing, masking, mandatory masking, mandatory testing, and now the vaccine rollout. So all of these are COVID measures because it's anything that the government has done supposedly to, did I say the B word? Sorry. So it's
just on that. Well, is it where they've basically rolled out something that breaks the law, or is it where their actions, like a sort of malfeasance or misfeasance, where they've affected us in a way that they've driven people insane, driven people to suicide? They've harmed us mentally, as opposed to and physically,
Yeah, so this is an area of law called tort, and it doesn't rely on statute. So this area of law is steeped in historical cases dating back hundreds of years. Oh, wait, I have a visitor in the room. Hold on. Hello. Do you want to stay here quietly while I have a chat? Yes, good girl. So, it's historical cases. So that means, for the common law people out there that will be listening to this should be heartened by this, because it doesn't mean we don't have to argue legislation. We don't have to prove that the Coronavirus Act was null and void, or we don't have to prove that this section or that section is wrong. We don't even have to prove that it's illegal. So it's a really, it's to wrap your head around it. It's a really fascinating area of law. But essentially, if somebody has done something that has harmed you, and they could have known that was going to harm you, so they ought to have taken certain measures, certain steps to not do that thing, then you potentially got a case against them.
Now, just to sort of firm up on that. So, say let's use the example. And I remember now how we did get together, because it was exactly around this, because we were going down that route in our Scottish People's Forum. Yeah. And we were thinking class action or group litigation, you call it, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So basically a class action is everybody who's been harmed all joined together, they hire lawyers, the lawyer sees that it could be a big case and he represents everybody, and if there's a payout, it goes to everybody, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
and that's what we were talking about, Mina. So,
That's right.
and what we were looking at is things like the government's mask policy for people with exemptions, and basically we were saying, but there was people getting uh, beaten up by security guards, manhandled. You know, I've saw photographs of young girls with their arms all bruised because some security guards grabbed them and uh, threw them out the door because they don't have a mask on. Now, that means that the government should have had the foresight to see that these policies could have been badly applied and that these exemptions were not being uh, properly administered by these stewards and shops and retail outlets and anywhere that was had a mask policy, and that people were being physically and emotionally damaged by that, and they should have spent as much money on things like signs to say no mask, we don't ask, and making sure that the training was correct. So that was one area we were interested in. Is that an area?
Yeah, that would certainly come into it. Yeah, that would certainly come into it. It's let me think. So it's a lot more than that as well, and it's actually simpler than that, really, because when the government started to create these measures and create a response, as they like to call it, they would have had to do some kind of risk analysis and weigh up the pros and cons, or risks versus benefits. So they did actually come on to these conferences at Downing Street, and the early press conferences in March, and you will have seen Boris and Whitty saying things like, "We understand that these measures are going to cause harm themselves." In actual fact, it was Chris Whitty that said in early March that he talked about 3 kinds of deaths. So he said that there were going to be deaths from COVID, the virus, and he said and then there were going to be indirect deaths. And of the indirect deaths, there were going to be deaths from those who couldn't access medical care because it was shut down. And then thirdly, it would be something along the lines. So I'd have to go back and check exactly what was actually said. But essentially, he was saying there would be deaths from the measures themselves. The measures themselves would cause the harms.
And is that where the law comes in? Is that where these the torque comes in?
Well, yes, because if you are that person who's making those decisions, then you would be looking at the net benefit, really. Like, there have been so many scientific articles put out talking about the lockdowns are what is the lockdowns are worse than the actual virus themselves in terms of the harm. So,
yep.
What's the phrase?
The cure is worse than the disease type thing.
That's exactly what was at the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, the cure is worse than the disease.
So there have been so many articles put out about on that line, and that appears to be the case. So when you look at the numbers, when you look at the stats, and there is so much evidence. So if you look at the stats, and you look at the deaths, look at who's died, look at when they died, what they died from. You look at the all-cause mortality rate in 2020.
Financial harm, all of those things, physical, mental.
So, yeah, and of course, if anybody saw that interview with John O'Looney on UK Column, because I tend to tune into UK Column and the High Wire kind of religiously to get the accurate news of what's going on. And John O'Looney, the Undertaker, had talked about that drug that they were using in care homes. Mm-hmm. And he also talked about when they did the rollout of the injections, that's when the death rate soared. He actually predicted it, and it happened. Like, I mean, his words were literally, it's almost as soon as the needle went in the arms, death rate just soared. Yeah. And he's talking about now.
And these care workers must have seen that as well, and that's why some of them are holding the line. You know, nobody wants to lose their job. but nobody wants to see. If you've seen that happen and you've seen the reactions and you've got your own views on it and you've done your own research on it, then 60,000 care workers could arguably have kept their jobs had they rolled their sleeves up, but they didn't want to, Mina. They had seen enough, they'd researched enough that it's a percentage. I think for care workers it's something like 5% or something like that, 6%. Is that about right, do you think?
Exactly. I don't know the numbers. I do know that a friend of mine who's a nurse has got the first one when it was first offered, and then had seen colleagues getting sick. One of them got hospitalised, and within weeks passed away. And she then said to me, Mina, I wish I'd never had it. Wish I'd never done it. And she said to me, there's no way my daughter's going to have it. So,
well, this is it, and there's a viewer there, and this is obviously private because we don't know who it is, but I can say firsthand the elderly have been abused, and I'll never take this jag. Now, that sounds like somebody who potentially works in a care home. They've seen it firsthand, and it's the same as the nurses. 100,000 nurses, doctors, they're not going to take it. They certainly don't want to lose their jobs, Mina.
No, they don't.
So the easiest thing in the world to do is to roll your sleeve up, but it's not. It's the most difficult thing in the world to do, because wild horses wouldn't make me take it. Like nothing would make me take it, and I'm not seeing it firsthand the way these nurses and doctors are.
I think it depends whether you've been awake to certain things in the past before. Now, I'm diagnosed with Asperger's, and I had no idea of the link, but I knew from sort of the late 90s when that conversation started with Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who was the one that was, kind of criminalised almost for speaking, for publishing an article, and there was a link, with a certain triple jab sort of thing, right? And all that conversation died a death. And now I've got a daughter, and we spoke to our homeopath. It was the year before COVID started, so 2019, go back to summer of 2019. And this homeopath said to me, she said, Mina, I could be struck off if I was found to be telling you this. However, there's a link between and of course, Asperger's is on the autistic spectrum, right? So, and I had quite a lot of additional to your usual kind of ones that you have at school and at birth and what have you. So I had a whole round of them in my 20s as well, additionally, for travel and stuff like that. So I don't know where it's come from, but when she alerted me to this link and sort of re-alerted it, I, of course, didn't believe what she was saying, because she said to me, Mina, the internet has been cold. That was her word. The internet has been cold. You can't even find it. So I searched it, and sure enough, if you type in, the two linked words, then you find nothing other than pharmaceutical hype. A pharmaceutical kind of spin and propaganda, which says that there is no link between these two things. And literally, that's the story you see. You see hundreds and hundreds of the same message. So,
well, this is why it's so controlled. I mean, there was this thing that the other day I saw one. It was a newspaper headline in Scotland, and it said, heart attacks in Scotland are up this year 40%. Scientists are baffled. But not. I mean, okay. So what's changed then, right? So let's put it on the table. What's changed in Scotland then? Is it the fact that 80% of people are now double jabbed? Could that be? No, but they're too baffled to even put that on the table, Mina. That's no. Let's be scientists here. Let's not put that into the equation. That it couldn't possibly be that, could it?
No, it couldn't possibly be. Because they're safe and effective. So they're totally safe. That's the thing.
But it's not just scientists. It's people. Yeah, it's like And I predicted this, as did many others. I'm not saying I'm a soothsayer here. You know, we were saying at the start, they're going to get it. They're going to get the seabird, and they're going to say that was horrible. But how much worse would it have been had I not had my double jab? And how many of them religiously, and I'll use that word purposely, say that now, that they are pinning their life, their survival on the fact that they got COVID and they survived it because they're double jabbed. And how much worse would it have been?
Yeah, well, this is the mind control that's happened, because it doesn't matter how sick you get. If you're a certain person, if you're that way inclined, it doesn't matter how sick you're going to get from the jab. You know, you could be bedridden and shivering and shaking and for days, but you will then come out of that and you will say, thank God, because it could have been a lot worse. I mean, that's just cognitive dissonance of the highest level, because when in history ever would you expect a jab to cause you that? When? Never. It's just never, ever happened. And it's bizarre. But Steve, do you know about the previous coronavirus trials for jabs? They've been working on a jab for an injection for an immunity thing for coronaviruses since the original SARS breakout, which was back in 2002, 2003. So the scientists have been working on that. Now, if you look at, and Robert Kennedy Jr. has been speaking about this quite a while back, and what happened is they'd done these, so scientifically, my working knowledge tells me that scientifically it's very difficult to make an injection, an immunity injection for these types of viruses. And the reason why is it's something inherent in that type of virus. And the inherent thing in that type of virus is propensity for it to develop ADEs, so antibody-dependent enhancement. So what that means is it kicks off your antibody response to such a heightened degree that it ends up, you end up attacking your own body. So the antibodies end up attacking your own bodies and organs. And so so they tried it, and they got so far, and in the pharmaceutical industry, efficacy, because I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry for like kind of a blip of a time as a rep, right? So I know these words, and I know that when they say efficacy in pharmaceuticals, what they mean is it triggers a response. They don't mean, so efficacy is different to effective. So, and even effective doesn't mean what you think it means if you're a layperson. So efficacy means it triggers antibodies. But triggering antibodies doesn't mean you're protected necessarily. So when they first trialed these jabs on the animals, and they used ferrets, then they did some with mice, and I think they did some with cats as well. But in particular, there's a study on ferrets, and all the ferrets died. Oh, no, they didn't. No. Sorry, I'm being called by my daughter. Yes, Tara? I've done a poo. Okay, I will do in a minute. I've got to change a nappy. So
you can change it if you want.
Just before we came on, I changed one. So sorry.
That's okay.
Because the thing is, my husband's there, but my husband's recovering from a hip operation, so he can't change nappies at the moment. Yeah. So anyway, as I say, so it did trigger the immune response.
Well, listen, we're half an hour away from finishing. So if you wanted, how long does it take these days to check?
I'll do it in a minute, because I'll tell you, because otherwise I'll lose my train of thought. So they got this antibody response, and they were like, hooray, we've got an antibody response. It's efficacious. We have efficacy in these vaccines, right? So then the next stage, when they do these trials, you see, in animals, they do a thing called challenge, right? So challenge trial means you challenge the virus. So you've injected them, and then you challenge them with a live virus. And what they do is literally inject a live virus into the creature. and then see what happens. And ideally, if that works, then the animal will be protected and they won't get a disease. That shows it works. That's a challenge trial. And
Right.
anyway, what happened in the challenge trials, they either died or they had multiple organ failure, particularly the heart. So heart, kidneys, all of these things just exploded.
Exactly what we're seeing.
Imploded.
Scientists baffled, but they can't make that connection.
But do you know, Steve, they wanted to do that. There is this huge organization that's set up, and they've recruited so, like, I think the last I saw about it, when I first heard about it, it's like 40,000 people all around the world had signed up to be part of a human challenge trial for these new experimental, gene modifying treatments. How crazy is that? So imagine what's happening in these challenge trials.
Well, this is the example that I often use. If it wasn't, excuse me, if it wasn't for the peer group pressure and the virtue signaling and the group cohesion and the brainwashing, if you take yourself back 2 years, Mina, and they said, you opened up the newspaper and you said, oh, to your husband, oh, look, this weekend, Pfizer's coming to town and they're going to be giving away experimental drugs, and we get £2,000 each if we take 3 doses of it. That's for me, you, and the kid. Should we do it? It's £2,000 each. I mean, that's a lot of money, isn't it?
But is that what they're giving them?
No. This is just a scenario. I'm painting a scenario from 2 years ago, and what I'm saying is, there's not a couple with kids in the UK who would say, yeah, let's go and get £2,000 and make our kids an experiment and make us an experiment. When our job as parents is to be here for our kids, why would they take that risk for £2,000? But they're taking that risk for nothing. They're not even getting £2,000.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And it would have been ridiculous. They would have laughed you off the park 2 years ago if you'd have suggested that to any parent in the UK, that they would do that. But yet they're doing it now for nothing more than the news 24/7 broadcasting to them, and their government threatening them that you won't be able to get into pubs or you won't be able to go on holiday. And they've given up absolutely everything to take part in an experiment. And this is when you come back, because you're going to go and do this nappy change, and I'm going to find a way to do a one-man band entertainment of these people. How long does it take you to do a nappy? What
it shouldn't take too long. If she complies, it shouldn't take too long. But
okay, well, you make her comply, and I'll continue that conversation if you want.
Go through the KAKUK website. I'll tell you what, if you want to, you can go to the KAKUK website. But I've just put up a post today, and it's about this thing about so we've got this stance of my body, my choice. And I've always been saying, and actually I've heard that Andrew Wakefield goes with this line of thought as well. My body, my choice is not going to win you the argument in the courts. What will win you the argument in the courts is where there is risk, there must be choice. And the reason for that is my body, my choice can appear selfish. So in a kind of democratic society, in a civilized society, we tend to naturally make compromises and concessions, right? Now, we're being painted as being selfish and terrorist if we're standing up for our rights, because if everyone's brainwashed to believe that this is so deadly that everybody has to be jabbed, then they can't accept your stance, right? So this is what I'm trying to get is the view that I'm trying to get across, is that forget about my body, my choice for the time being. Yes, that might be a stance, but just think about how you're going to win somebody else over, because you're not going to win that person over by saying it's about my rights, but you are going to win them over by saying, well, there's a risk to you. So, because honestly, people don't believe there's a risk. I just think.
So you think that's the correct? Yeah. So you think that's the correct legal angle then?
I do, because when you prove that there is a risk, it can't possibly be legally acceptable to force anybody to take a risk to their body. But you see that what the government stance is that this isn't risky. That's how they're framing it. This isn't risky, right? So,
and you think that's the best? You think that's the best angle then?
absolutely, my body, my choice won't work. But my rights doesn't wash. Not when you're dealing with so much obfuscation of the truth. You've got to prove the truth, and the truth is that these things do cause harm. And actually, there is, I've done a lot of, I've done a lot of research, but I've looked at enough to show that the stats can tell us that there are links with the amount of jabbing and the amount of chronic illness. And there are graphs and charts that just show this in plain sight, and it's being hidden. So that's why when that homeopath said to me, "Let me know the internet has been culled," this is the hidden information. You sound like a theorist when you say things like this, and I wouldn't have used that sort of language a couple of years ago. But this is the truth, that it is hidden information. So it's about getting that hidden information out into the public eye.
Yeah, and getting people comfortable with using that information and taking that position so that they can stand in it and present it properly. Okay, well that's a good chance to segue into this, because I'm going to put this video up where you talk about your understand your exemption. The understand your exemptions video covers this in some way, doesn't it? That it's about risk, isn't it? Slightly different.
On a different tone. It's more about getting your legal rights. But I can talk to you about mandates.
I'm going to bring that video up where we talk about assert your exemptions. Yeah, because I think that was a good video that was very popular. And then when you come back, just give me a shout. I'll see when you come back.
I will do. Okay, all right, cool.
Okay, good. So what we're going to look at now, guys, is a video that Mina put together recently. It's a very popular video, and we're just going to look at a couple of minutes of it, and I'll just give you a little insight into Mina and what she does. So let me get this up for you, and you should be able to hear this. I'm going to ask you just to confirm in the chat room that you can hear it.
Hello, and welcome to CAC UK's Legal Surgery for Friday, the 24th of September, 2021. Now, this is actually a re-recording of a Zoom session that we did, which was more of an interactive session. So this is just the presentation part. And CAC UK, that's CAC UK, stands for Class Action COVID UK. Class Action COVID UK aims to bring a legal case against the UK government for the lockdown harms we have all suffered and are continuing to suffer. And Freedom Friday is part of CAC UK's initiative to empower you on a personal level while we work on the big legal case in the background. So every third Friday of every month, CAC UK will bring you a legal surgery to help and encourage you to know and assert your rights. And that's because it's one thing to know your rights, but it can be quite another thing to assert those rights effectively, especially when you are governed by an oppressive and unlawful regime, which is actively working to obfuscate your legal rights. So today's session, we will discuss vaccine exemptions. And this is based on the backdrop to this is that the UK government has recently passed legislation mandating vaccination for any person entering a care home unless they're exempt. And this is not limited to care home staff. So you could be a plumber, a hairdresser, or somebody employed by a local authority who may or may not be required to enter the premises of care home at any point in the future. Okay, so this legislation may be illegal, but until that is proven in the courts and the legislation scrapped, and until we can get medical mandates outlawed everywhere, forever, your personal immediate answer to these wrongful mandates lies in declaring your vaccine exemption. So in this presentation, I'll show you how anybody in this country can exempt themselves if they don't want to be vaccinated. And I do recommend that everybody in the country now considers following these steps, because the care sector is merely the easiest target for government to attack first. In reality, we are all under threat from vaccine passports, otherwise known as mandatory vaccination. So just to introduce myself, I'm Mina Dew, and I started Class Action UK last October. I do have a law degree as well as a psychology degree, but I'm not a lawyer, and nothing in this presentation will be taken as legal advice. I will present a general interpretation of the law, and for personal advice, you should consult a lawyer. So the agenda for today, first of all, we will look at the legislation. And this is important because only the legislation can tell you what the legislation says. So we're going to go straight to the source. And I will show you how to search for legislation online and how you can interpret the words used in the legislation. So following this, we're then going to look at some guidance that the UK government has put out. And I will show you how this guidance appears to go over and above what the legislation says. And I'll explain why this is wrong. We will then look at a couple of letters, and one is an open letter to UK government.
And I was just bringing us both back in now, Mina. That was a good intro. So that'll whet their appetite for anybody who's not seen it yet. It's a very, very well put together presentation, Mina.
Thank you.
Very good. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you're good on computers. You're good with words. You're good at creating documents, and you're good at presenting things. You know, nothing you do is in any way shonky or amateurish, which I don't think you can be when you're creating a class action case. You know, if people think, no, you get compared recently, and this is important for our audience as well. And I know you, and this stuck out to me when I saw this. Somebody said this is the UK's Reiner Filmic, didn't they? Yeah.
I saw that comment. Yeah, and I was yeah.
You would have been pleased with that.
So
I think Reiner would have been pleased with that as well, I'm sure.
Thank you. So I have spoken to Reiner, and he is absolutely a great guy, really grounded, really down to earth, and really genuine and really honest. So obviously, you know, and he's done numerous interviews, and he comes across as just a really down to earth guy. And he's fully on board. So we spoke about the various cases, and he's fully on board with where I stand and where CAC UK is going. Because in actual fact, where Reiner is qualified to practice in Germany and in America, and they're also working with teams around the world, so in South Africa and various different countries, but they don't have, you know, he's not qualified to practice law in the UK. So when I've explained what we are doing, it really fits in line. And it's a different case, actually, right? Because UK law, we have this common law system, and Germany is not a common law jurisdiction. And so the laws are different. So they're bringing their case, and it's a series of cases, actually. You know, there was a defamation case, and there's various bits involved. So it's basically attacking different angles. So they're bringing different cases, but it's more to do with the fraud, and obviously there's that. They're going much more into depth about the crimes against humanity because they have that information, they have those that evidence. Whereas, you know, and they go hand in hand. So if their cases win on any significant area, then that will help our case, and vice versa. So you know, if Class Action COVID UK gets a win in the courts, or gets a preferential judgment in the courts, then that will have a knock-on effect, because it's not just proving one thing in the courts, it's proving little things as well. So it's, you know, you could get a judgment that doesn't say one thing but says another thing. So I'll just give you an example. So that the Portuguese case, which had said that the PCR test is unreliable, that wasn't a case against the PCR test. It was an outcome of the case. So the case was about false imprisonment, right? So these 4 guys were detained for an extremely long time, far longer than they ought to have been. And the reason why they were detained for so long is because they kept testing positive, right? So the argument was, this can't be the case. They are clearly asymptomatic, they're not diseased, they're not infectious or infected, but this PCR test keeps on coming back positive, positive, positive. So the arguments that were presented proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the PCR test is actually faulty. It's not fit for purpose. Why? Because, and I spoke to an immunologist today actually, it's standard industry knowledge that if you are working with PCR, so pre-COVID, PCR did exist pre-COVID, if you're working with PCR, standard industry knowledge is, industry standard is that you would run it to maybe 30 cycles. And this person said to me, if I'd run a test to 32 cycles, I'd be laughed out of the room, because my boss would say to me, that's ridiculous. That's not a reliable test. So here we've got labs in the UK running up to 40 and 45 cycles, and the courts agreed with this scientific paper that had been put out that said that if you run a test over, I think it was 33 cycles, over and above 33 cycles, you've got a 97% chance that it's a false positive. False positive. And there are different types of false positive as well.
Is it a stronger case when the result swings your way as a byproduct of another angle? So they came at it that they'd been imprisoned for too long, and they proved they'd been imprisoned for too long because the judge eventually found that the PCR test was wrong. Does that make it a stronger case than going for the PCR in the first instance, or is it weaken
Not
the case?
necessarily, but it's about how you go for the PCR. So I don't know whether the reasoning for that, because so there's a strategy, right? So if you want to prove something, you have to find the right angle. So if you want to prove, let's say, for example, if you want to prove that Matt Hancock is a crook, you don't just, take him to court and say he's a crook. You have to find something that he's done that you can pin down, and then you've got to build a case around it. So it's about finding the strategy of how you get to the end result. So this is what we're doing with CAC UK, because it is quite a technically, it's legally sort of quite a technical jigsaw puzzle, if you like, of stuff that we're putting together. And I do get pressured by people saying, oh, we want to know what it's, because it's a class action, we should be informed of everything that's going on. But it doesn't really work like that, because it's one case, and it should be one case that fits every individual. But there's no point in each individual knowing the ins and outs. And if they did, the more information that we put out that's in the public domain, the weaker we're going to be, because as soon as it's out there, then your defendant knows what you're doing. So it goes without saying that you keep everything completely confidential until we're ready to put a statement of claim in.
And where are you at then? So I get that totally, and I'm sure anybody watching this gets that. You don't want to put all your all the slam dunks of your case on the table just now. You're going to keep them up your sleeve, and you're quite tight with that. I don't mean that in a bad way, like the Scottish people are tight. I mean, like you're tight with the information. You're not going to let, you're not loose lips sink ships, and you're not the kind of person who goes about blabbing. You're not in this for ego or anything, Mina. I know that. I know you too well.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, what you've got, where are you at in terms of 10 being a slam dunk case? You think you've got them guaranteed, and 0, you don't think you've got any chance? I know it's difficult to say on that scale. Where do you think you're at just now?
There's a whole range of. I will say that the longer it takes to get this into the courts, the more difficult it becomes, because the agenda is getting stronger, and the infiltration, the brainwashing is getting stronger, and the effect of all of this is getting stronger, and the propaganda gets stronger. So we've got to get it in the courts as soon as possible. There's a lot of work to be done, but when you slam dunk, I mean, in a normal world, this would be a slam dunk case, but we're not in a normal world. So, when you go up against a judge, you have to present an argument, and it's the barrister's job to convince the judge. So you've got a barrister on both sides. So your barrister is telling the judge one thing, and the other barrister is arguing against you and telling the judge the other thing. Now, there's I don't know if you've heard the phrase, the barrister's wit, or wit of a barrister. So barristers are kind of almost like, presenters or actors, because they bring the law, but they have to bring it with flair and be persuasive. So you can have a brilliant argument, but unless you can put it across persuasively, and when you study law, you see all the things that have gone wrong in cases, and you can see that it's not just about having a great case; it's about being able to persuade, and that can come down to really fine details. So you'll see a case, for example, that it would have been a really good case, but it lost on a technical item, just one technical item. And so when you get into the real fine details of arguing, the nuances of the argument, that's when you have to be really on the ball, or your barrister's got to be really on the ball, because it's almost like you've got to think on your feet to kind of, when they attack, you've got to be able to be there with the defence, or when they defend,
and have you picked your barrister? I know the case is in progress, but have you picked your barrister yet?
Not yet, but we do have somebody in mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when do you think the case might? Okay, so I've got two questions here then. One, when do you think the case get to court? No, I've got three questions actually. Let me ask you.
Okay.
Answer that one first, yeah.
I think we'll have a better idea I'm hoping by Christmas, because what I'd really like to do is, there's bits of work to do, and what I'd really like to do is have a kind of preliminary decision before Christmas, so we can have a kind of like a minor win, like a minor hurdle to get across before Christmas, and then we can be in a better position to see where we stand with that. So that's where I want to be before Christmas. And if it doesn't happen before Christmas, okay, fine, but we're working really hard and we're trying to do it as quickly as possible. If that happens, it could take another 6 months to get into the courts, but it all depends, right? So this is what we need. The thing that will make the difference is having a dedicated team, because we're all working for free. So me and a couple of other lawyers and other people are working. We have a donation box for CAC-UK, but we're not taking out of that for our own funds, for our own work. That is to pay the barristers. Now, we don't know yet
other than that,
but
it's costing you money. You can't do it all yourself. So you have to find a way to get everybody to chip in for it, believe in the case and chip in and support you.
Well, essentially, if people are going to dedicate their time full time to work on this, then they're going to be wanting to be paid for their professional time. And, particularly if you want to get the right people, good people, you do have to pay people to put in their time and work. So that's, if we get good funds for it, then we can get that legal work, and we can get good lawyers, and we already have great people, but we're able to fund the work that we're doing. You see what
and how much is funding still an issue then? How much of this, let's say you finished the case, you were all ready. Could you still not potentially fail to get this over the line because of funding?
Well, I have faith in the funding, and actually it has been put that it could be done on a no-win, no-fee basis. So, like I say, when we get past this first hurdle, that's when we'll start addressing those kind of questions, because there's no point in addressing those kind of questions until you get over the first hurdle. So when we get over the first hurdle, then we'll start looking at how we're going to do it. Are we going? Because of course, when you talk about no-win, no-fee, there's also important things that you need to look at for that as well. And then of course there's adverse costs, and paying the other side's costs if you lose and things like that. So we're going to have to look at contingency plans for those kind of things as well. But when I first started this, my thinking was, and I think we had a conversation, my thinking was that everybody's been harmed. Not everybody feels like they've been harmed, and not everybody knows they've been harmed. But let's say there's about a third of this country who at some point down the line identifies that, yes, they are a potential claimant in this case. That's 20,000 people out of 60,000 in this country. If 20,000 people all gave a tenner, that would be £200,000. If 20,000 people gave, I don't know, like £100, you know, so it's if people are willing to contribute a small amount, we can get this underway. But it's also
and when a claim is the result of a claim like this normally a payout, i.e., yeah, you have been harmed, and we're going to charge the government. We're going to fine the government in favour of the plaintiffs, I suppose we call it.
Yeah, you call them claimants in the UK, but yeah, it's
Claimants, yeah.
There are 3 categories of harm that we're looking at: financial harm, medical harm, and psychological harm, and they overlap as well. So you would normally be affected in more than one way. 2 or 2 out of 3, or all 3 possibly. So if your business has gone down, and aside from the fact that you might have been on furlough, or you might have had a payout from the government, but it still won't have compensated you for your loss, then that's what you're claiming for. You're claiming for your financial losses. So that's the easiest kind of case to assess, because you can quantify your financial losses. Now, then you've got your financial losses. That could be 1 million or 10 million. And then on top of that, you've experienced stress, you've experienced a breakdown. Maybe, your family member died in the process, or from, wrong treatment in a hospital, or that kind of thing, wrong diagnosis, put on morphine, kidney failure or whatever because of a particular diagnosis, and the wrong treatments were given. So all these things are happening. Then that's exacerbated that's added stress and psychological harm to what you've suffered. So that's a bit more difficult to quantify, but it's the only way you can compensate it is by quantifying it. So that's the process that you go through. So there are specialist lawyers that will deal with that side of things, quantifying losses, and of course medical losses. So you might have your cancer, you might have had a heart attack at home because you couldn't get to the hospital was shut, or all your teeth fell out because the dentist was shut, or whatever, right? So there's people that have suffered a lot of dental harm as well because they couldn't get to a dentist. So much stuff.
Absolutely.
So you can quantify these, but there's more to this. There's more purpose. There's a bigger purpose to this case than just compensating people. And I think most people who want a result would agree with this, that the most important thing is identifying. So on the surface, it's a harms case. You've harmed me, you owe me money, right? But underneath that is, when we go through the process of having this discussion of proving that the harm was done and the reasons why that was done, we then come out with, perhaps a judgment that will discuss those things. So in a judgment, I don't know if you've ever read a judgment, but if you read a judgment, it can be, really short, it can be like many pages long. And there's some really interesting comments that the judges make, and they will sum up the arguments and they'll put their view across. And in summing up the arguments, they will make particular statements. And right, so this is where common law comes in. So the statements that they make, if a particular statement was the overriding or overwhelming reason for them judging this way or that way, then that can be relied upon in a future case. Okay, so let's say, just throwing it out there, let's say, for instance, the judge said, or the judges said, that the lead judge was to say, government failed to do this, that, or the other. They didn't properly assess the risks of masks, or they didn't properly assess the risks of this or the other, and that is why they've caused this harm. So underlying that is then the assumption that government is expected to do these things in the future, because otherwise you end up with the same scenario. So that's how, off the back of a judgment, you can get future laws in place.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So consider this. So this is my ultimate. This is my ultimate goal. You see how smoke on cigarette packets, pretty much 50% of the packet is covered by smoking kills or some kind of like ugly picture of like
horrible photos. Right? Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So, and that is a result of, you know, many years of lobbying and fighting for the pharmaceutical industries to admit that smoking is linked to cancer, because initially it wasn't. Apparently, there was no link, just like there's no link between these and anything else, neurological harm. There's no link.
Absolutely.
There's no link between an injection and a heart failure that happens 2 minutes later. There's no link, right? But through years and years and years of lobbying and proving this, right, you then start to create and evolve laws and legislation and statute that requires every manufacturer of these types of products to declare that there is risk. And let's say that we mandate them to declare it on 25% of, let's say you've got a leaflet, you've got a government leaflet about, you know, you are now invited for your flu jab, right? So, but let's say they are now required to cover 25% of that sheet of paper with a clear, black, dark warning that could lead to Okay, so in my thinking,
well, whereas now, you know, suppose you're not getting informed consent because you're not really, you know, they're just sort of paying lip service. Oh, you'll be fine. Maybe a sore arm. You know, maybe a sore arm compared to what you. I mean, there's people out there. There's people in the chat room there. We know you can get more than a sore arm. You know. But that's the way it's been played out. That is your informed consent. There's nothing on the letters that tell you there's going to be a problem. And the person doing it to you is just saying you might have a sore arm and a bit of a sore head. That's it.
It's a lie, and they're allowed to get away with it. I don't know how and why they're allowed to get away with it. What we'll do, you know, it's all lobbying, and it's the might of the pharmaceutical purse, isn't it? That's
and agenda driven as well, and you know, it's all been pushed through under these COVID laws as well. You know, these emergency laws. You know, they're getting away with it under the emergency laws because we've thrown away the rule books.
Yeah,
and that might be the byproduct of a case like this, because it's, and a few people pointed this out, and you've pointed this out. It's not about the money; it's about getting the case there. It's about setting the precedent, isn't it?
Setting the precedent, yeah. So that's it, yeah. In a case, then you set a precedent. So, you know, the precedent that we want to set is that there are certain things that governments can do and can't do, and that they must do and that they must not do. So if we can get these grounds established in the courts, then that's what sets our common law. And what's happening at the moment is our common law system is the whole of the legal system, and statute is one part of the legal system. That there appears to be, and people have said this to me, but there appears to be, you know, this kind of push to erode that system, to kind of, you know, to downplay it, and to bring in more and more coded law like they have in Europe. So everything is based on statute. So you've got the Coronavirus Act, you've got this regulation, you've got that regulation, and for people to just be guided blindly by the legislation without considering the whole of your human rights. So, you know, every piece of legislation that comes out has to be framed in and cannot go against your existing rights.
Makes sense. Now, just wrapping up here, because we're kind of at the hour point, and we've got is a little nappy break in between. So we're running 5 minutes late for a nappy break, and you know that happens. A lot of videos these days we have little nappy breaks. That's all fine. So don't worry about that. But yeah, that was all good, because I managed to get that video in, and I want people to watch that video because it's a very, very good video, and it's got a lot of viewers, and we'd like to add some more to that. So if people could visit the CAC UK website, that's cacuk.uk. Very easy. Okay. Join the Facebook group and stay in touch with Mina. Okay.
Although I will say the Facebook group is just completely, it's heavily restricted, and you'd be hard pushed to be able to find it. But
better than Telegram group, you think?
Telegram group, yeah, Telegram group you'll be able to find. Yeah, that's the best one. Really. Yeah. Outlaw Medical Mandates. It's called OutMed Man. And CAC UK.
Yeah. So again, you want people to be staying in touch. Just for the benefit of your members who are watching this, our website and our group is Awaken Pages. That's awakenpages.co.uk. We basically are a business directory connecting awakened people with awakened businesses, and it's going really well. We've got 20,000 members. Any friend of yours, Mina is a friend of ours, any one of your members, if they've got a business and they want to come along, we've got great free listings, we've got great options there. And if there's any members, and I'm sure you have plenty who would like to support awakened businesses, then we have got a very, very good group with lots of good energy, some really good people, and we've got some great things going on, if I do say so myself, since it is my group. But yeah, so there's a chance for us to cross-pollinate there across the groups. You and I go back a long way anyway. So
yeah, and what I'll do is I'll put that link into my next email newsletter as well, to give people an opportunity to go and visit that.
Yeah, that would be really good. Well, we'll chat about that when we finish up here. But thank you. As I said, I'd strongly suggest that people connect with you, connect with your groups, connect with the website, stay in touch, connect with your YouTube channel, because you're going to do your Friday meetings now, I think. So connect with that YouTube channel. That's a good one. That's the CAC UK Assert Your Rights, I believe the channel's called. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, CAC UK Assert Your Rights.
Yeah. And that's going to be a very, very good, very, very important channel moving forward. And you're getting some really good feedback on your videos there. So I know that that's going to go from strength to strength. So thank you, Mina, for everything you do. You're a wee cracker. You're doing some great work. Very hard worker. I tip my hat to you. Very, very hard worker. They say it takes one to know one. I'll give myself a pat on the back there as well. Yeah. No, you're doing great things, and you've been non-stop since I met you. You've been absolutely non-stop, and I know, I know a bit of your background in relation to the journey that you've had, and it's been absolutely non-stop. So well done, you. You're doing great, and you'll be well remembered and well praised when this thing comes off. So thank you, and thank you to everybody who watched across the groups. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully you found that useful, and it's been absolutely great to spend some time with Mina tonight. So thank you again, Mina.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all.